My name is Paul Sokoloff. I'm a botanist with the Canadian Museum of Nature, and right now we are in the middle of a large grove of white spruce along the Coppermine River in northwestern Nunavut. I'm part of a team of 3 botanists from the Museum of Nature, currently on a month-long expedition to collect all the plants in this part of Nunavut along the Coppermine River from the tree line north to the coast.
Along the Coppermine River there have been some collections made. Some collections, a few collections, a handful of collections were made 100 years ago as part of the Canadian Arctic expedition along this river valley. Except that team was here in February, so they only collected a few twigs, sticking up above the deep snowbanks. Aside from that, there's been scattered collections, but very little. There's been no comprehensive documentation of the diversity in this really rich transition zone where the forest, basically the tree line, the forest tundra, extends much further north than it does anywhere else in Nunavut. And we're finding a lot of major range extensions and things that were unexpected, simply because the area has not been explored.
So right now, we are in a densely wooded area. It's almost like a forest. If we went just up the hill though, it would resemble the Arctic tundra a bit more. There would be shorter plants, certainly no trees, and it would be dominated by plants that are well adapted to the cold and the wind found in this part of the Arctic.
So the tree line extends northwards up the Coppermine to about a little further north than here, and right now we're along a creek, and you can see these large spruce trees, probably 30 to 40 feet tall. What we're finding is a lot of more southern boreal species at their northern limit in this area, and some northern Arctic species at their southern limit in this area. The diversity is quite high when we're poking around in different places and habitats, and we're finding some interesting things. Lots of major range extensions for species that have not been collected in this area before.
One of those examples was an Arctic onion, which we found quite a few plants of actually at our last camp. And it's not known to occur in the Arctic, it's known in the boreal, but not up here. So that was quite interesting, that was a good surprise.
So one taxon that we found is Rubrus Arcticus. It's an Arctic species of raspberry, a little tiny herbaceous shrub, about 5-10 centimeters tall. It's got a bright pink, really fragrant flower. And it is living as an understory species, which is how it survives in this forest. And this is hasn't been collected anywhere near the Arctic. So this is, we think, a major range extension.
I think most interestingly, we have found Balsam Poplar, which is a tree that you know from down south, but we found it actually growing just not even 100 meters away from our camp. And this is particularly interesting because this is one of the few species that has been found to have been moving north over time.
The process that we use to collect plants and document plant biodiversity on a trip like this is to first get out here in the field. So we're in a remote area. We're about 40 kilometers south of the community of Kugluktuk, which is right on the Arctic coast in western Nunavut. And for the first week or so, we just explored the area around our camp up on the slope behind me. We explored in detail this community in here along the river. We've hiked up the creek several kilometers. We've hiked overland.
Essentially, we're trying to seek out different habitats that plants might be found in, different species. We're really attempting to find all of the different species that are located in this area. So we go to those places, we collect the plants, and then we bring them back to our camp where we begin to press the plants.
Basically, plants are put between sheets of newsprint. Every collection gets a unique collection number, and the specimens are then flattened in a plant press, basically between cardboards. We get a stack about this high, and we then strap it together, apply pressure so it flattens those plants, put it out in the wind and the sun if the sun's showing itself, and after a few days the plants dry. And once they're dried and taken care of, they'll last for centuries. And so we'll take all the specimens back to the Canadian Museum of Nature in Ottawa, and in the museum is the National Herbarium of Canada. The herbarium is basically a library of dried plants. We've got the best collection of Canadian Arctic plant specimens in the world, and of course we're trying to build that and document plant diversity in areas that have not been really properly collected. So we're gonna set up camp in Bloody Falls Territorial Park and document all the species that occur in that park. This information will be of use to our work, but also of use to the park biologists who at present don't have a comprehensive inventory of what the plant diversity is.
So after we've moved on to Bloody Falls and after we've collected everything that there is to be found in the park, we'll be moving further north into the community of Kugluktuk. While we're there, we'll also attempt to collect all the plants known in the community, but we'll also be doing a community presentation and be interacting with the people who live in the community. So fascinating that you would find, we found willows, and there are some well-known tall stands of willows, both along the mainland and even near Uluwatu on Victoria Island. But to find tall balsam poplar was really quite fascinating.
But if you have the males separate from the females, there's more chance that there'll be some genetic intermixing among individuals, which is good.
Certainly anytime you're doing fieldwork in remote locations, there are going to be challenges. One that you might see right now are the bugs, and there are a lot of mosquitoes in this part of the Arctic. We're away for a month, pretty much unsupported for the whole time. So in addition to the scientific work we're doing, the basics of day-to-day living are also quite, they keep you busy. Something as simple as making your morning coffee is actually a bit of a ritual that takes some practice.
So I spent a lot of time thinking about camp life because one of my roles as part of this team is to handle the food, so keep people fed, which is a really important task because we're burning a lot of calories, we're hiking a lot, and we work up big appetites. And so I like to make sure that everyone is interested in the food that they're eating and that they have something to look forward to at the end of the day. So I make a 5-day meal schedule for the dinners, which then rotates every 5 days, which seems to be enough variety to keep people interested.
So, as you can imagine, bathing in the Arctic is not necessarily something we do every day. We don't bring a shower with us in our camps. So we use streams and lakes, and they are cold. But nothing repels the mosquitoes better than cooling your body temperature down by plunging into an icy river.
Camp life is a very simple life. It just really cuts it down to basics. It's all about keeping yourself fed, keeping yourself warm, keeping yourself sheltered, and getting the work done. And I really appreciate that kind of simple living. So apart from the plants, a lot of what we see in terms of wilderness or wildlife or nature out here is actually is bird species. Mammals, we've seen a few, but they tend to be pretty elusive. So we've seen a caribou quite close up. We saw muskox around camp. We've caught a glimpse of a fox and a wolf. So I always have a pair of binoculars at the ready so that we can take a look at these different things that are out there.
This is the process by which our knowledge of biodiversity is developed. You know, people go into the field and bring back collections, and over time we can build up a distributional record. The temperature in this part of the Arctic raises in the next 50 to 100 years 1 degree or 2 degrees or 3 degrees, which is a major change in terms of how plant communities sort themselves ecologically. So there could be some major changes in the plant communities through time. We don't know what's going to happen. But by having a fairly good understanding of the species diversity that's in the general area now, we'll have at least some sort of baseline that we can use to compare changes in floristic diversity.